everyone. So I was in a hangout earlier today and I met a Christian, and he was a very young Christian, very nice young man who had ironically been raised a Mormon and then switched over to just mainstream Protestant Christianity. And in the course of the discussion, it made me realize how when people look at the world and they judge the things that happen around them, that sometimes they start with a certain bias. And we were talking about the cosmological argument, and we were talking about the watchmaker scenario, and this person had already basically subscribed to the idea that God created it and therefore it is this, instead of looking at the evidence and saying, well, because of the evidence, then I can attribute it to God. You see what I mean? He already had the assumption that God was the maker of the universe, therefore the evidence that we have falls into that category. And I think that happens more than we realize, where a person is looking at the world through a certain bias or through a certain lens, and it just needs to fit into their already categorized idea of the way that the world is. Because if it doesn't, then they have to reevaluate certain things. So this person wasn't able to look at the evidence and say, well, it could or it could not be God. Like maybe a non-believer would, not necessarily an atheist would say, oh, well, it's because it isn't absolutely God, and a believer would say it is absolutely God. But everybody knows that studies science that we reach this thing called the hard problem, which is that the origin of energy, if there is such a thing, and existence in and of itself has not been able to be answered, where it comes from and how it comes. So when I was in this discussion earlier, I thought, well, how many of these ideas are actually being forced because this person subscribes to a certain belief system that is not being challenged? It's not that other people are challenging it, it's that in his own mind, it's not being challenged. It's not even up for debate as far as, let me look at the world and could it be God or could it be something else? The question doesn't even come up, because so many of the beliefs and so many of the basic starting points are already beginning with this idea that God created it. And so, of course, when we talk about the Big Bang, when we talk about the fact that creation appears to us as having a designer, whether that is God the designer or evolution is the designer, is not being even up for debate or discussion. And so I have some questions for believers, and I wanted them to just to be thought about. I mean, even if you don't want to answer them in the comment section, just if you even think about them, I think that it would do you some good, because there's a lot of assumption that you're making, and where do these assumptions come from? Why do you believe that the Bible is the Word of God? What experiences have you had that would make you, without person telling you or without a culture saying this is the Bible, this is the holy book, what about it makes you feel that it is the Word of God? Okay, that's the first question. The next question is, have you ever read any other works that claim to be the Word of God? And how do they hold up to the Bible? Almost anybody will admit, if they've read the Bible, that there are certain pearls of wisdom within the Bible. But what makes you think that it's the Word of God? And how do the other Word of God books that exist, are they better? Are they worse? Can we look at them objectively? Even if you're a believer, can you look at them objectively and say, well, is it better or worse than the Bible? Does it actually hold more truth or less truth? And is everything that's in the Bible the Word of God? Or does some of the things in the Bible reflect man's word or Jewish custom? Does everything have to be the Word of God if it's in the Bible? Another question that I have with wondering about believers is, can they recognize the idea of the great mystery, the question of existence, and that everybody has this innate feeling of mystery inside of them, of ponderment about the universe and how we came into being. But do they understand that this innate mystery, because we don't know how the origin of all of this began, is what's called the larger or the greater God concept. It doesn't have anything to do with their specific religious dogma. Just because people wonder and question existence doesn't necessarily mean that they're subscribing to your belief of God. Okay? This is a little bit of an off-the-cuff question right here, but do you agree that certain rulers at the time, do you think it was right or wrong that they forced Christianity upon people? Do you realize that a lot of Christianity, even now, wouldn't exist if it hadn't been forced upon people back in time? It was something that they had to believe in, or they would die, and many people did die because they wouldn't believe. Do you think that was right or wrong? The fact that you think that Christianity is the true religion, do you think that it was right or wrong that it was forced on people at a certain time in history? And do you understand how religious warfare plays into this? Do you know that it's more likely that a person will go to war for what they believe in versus if they don't believe in it? And the history of religious warfare in Christianity, do you have historical knowledge about that type of thing? The last question that I want to ask to believers is if, big if, Christianity was proven untrue, would it turn you into an atheist, or would you end up trying to find another religion that holds to a certain God concept? Where would you go if Christianity was proven to be untrue tomorrow? And the reason that I want you to examine some of these questions and just think about them. You don't have to believe what I believe, and you don't have to believe what an atheist believes. You don't have to believe anything. I just want you to think about these questions and see where you come, see what you come to, because so much of why we judge certain things the way we do and why we hold to certain ideas has to do with really baseline beliefs that maybe haven't even been questioned or examined. So let's examine them. All right? I love you guys. Talk to you later.